I've got 12 Strong, which stars Chris Hemsworth, Michael Pena, Trevante Rhodes, and my favorite weirdo, Michael Shannon. And it's based on the true story of 12 soldiers who, I think based on my understanding, were the first to engage in military action in Afghanistan following 9/11. So they were there, like, boots on the ground within a few days. Like, it wasn't publicized. It was a very top secret mission, but they were, like, the first to engage in any sort of combat, and you hadn't heard this story before because it was classified. So the movie is pretty much like most other war movies. Like, there wasn't anything particularly special about it. The whole thing was it's a modern war movie, but they're on horses sometimes. I was like, okay, are we going to play into this? But nope, there's no struggle. Like, Chris Hemsworth knows how to ride a horse, and they explain that why. And I was like, okay, well, are they going to have issues with combat? Like, obviously, some of them have never been on the horses before, but nope, still shooting pretty well. And, like, no problem. Somebody slips a disc at one point. I was like, okay. But that's your hook, right? Like, that's the big thing here is combat-wise, if you're going to make a military war, Jerry Bruckheimer, this is a Jerry Bruckheimer-produced movie, like, give it something interesting and original. That's your kind of gimmick, for lack of a better word in this scenario. And nope, nothing. There's no, like, cavalry charge. There's no anything like that. And I was just like, okay, so they're just on horses. They could have been on foot, and this would have had the exact same impact. It would have just been a war movie.
Wait, is that the whole central premise of the movie? Is that they're on horses?
I think part of the complications of the story, they were in a very tough tactical position, and they had to get to one of the cities to take it over. Otherwise, essentially, like, the Taliban was going to take over the whole country. And so the geography of Afghanistan is very challenging, and the only way to get to the city was basically on horseback through, like, where they were able to safely drop. And so it's like, okay, like, I get why that's part of it, but then that isn't really part of it. Like, I felt like the whole time I just was like, okay, they're on a horse, big deal. And this whole thing is, the 12 soldiers on horseback and this and that. And there's like now a memorial statue of them on horseback. I was like, then why not focus on that? The challenges of the terrain and, like, them not knowing how to ride a horse. But no, it just feels like a very cookie-cutter war movie. The film is very violent also, as you'd expect from a Jerry Bruckheimer film or produced film. And I'm not into that particularly. Like, it felt kind of like unnecessary violence a bunch of times. Like, I was like, do I need to see this person being shot in the head? No. Do I need to see, like, all these tanks blowing up? Like, not particularly. It felt like recycled footage. Like, they kept dropping bombs, and I was like, did we just see exactly this? And they were like, oh, let's just shoot it once and use it again, and we'll, like, nobody will know that it's a different shot. Like, it felt like lazy filmmaking to me. And, like, the actors are fine. They're all doing a fine job, but I got bored, which is sad when I felt like desensitized to the violence by the end, and I was bored, and that's not a good thing for a film. And I was frustrated. I think what frustrated me the most is it felt very rah-rah war. And I remember, like, the days following 9/11, and it was like crazy patriotism and stuff like that. So I understand that motivation. But then at the same time, like, all the Afghan characters felt very one-dimensional. I was like, have we not moved past this, like, weird, sad Islamophobia, like, everyone's the same thing?
That's one of the things that's interesting about Jerry Bruckheimer is that I had read before that some of his prior war movies, he had CIA consultants, and that's why I was curious if this was like a big pro-war, yay type of movie.
It felt very pro-war, yay, like, go America, fine, that's sure, fine. Like, I'm not arguing with that part of it. But I was I'm like, there's one main, like, Afghan character who's one of the warlords there, General Dostrom, and he actually went on to become one of the vice presidents of Afghanistan, like, after we basically invaded for 18 years. And they kept being like, oh, this will be over in a week, this will be over in a week. I was like, oh my God, hindsight. But he's basically the representative, right, for the quote good guys of Afghanistan, and at the same time, like, it's a 2-hour plus movie, and he doesn't have anything that justifies why he hates the Taliban and why he hates his fellow warlords until an hour and a half in, and even then it's this, like, one-off scene. And I was like, this just feels like it's not doing service. We know so much more about the conflict now than we did then. Then I understand in, like, 2001 it was very, like, good guys, bad guys, and now it's like, look, there's more to it. And they kept calling, like, all the characters, including the characters from Afghanistan, kept saying how horrible Afghanistan is. And I'm like, look, man, let's not perpetuate this shithole country thing. Like, you cannot imply that every single person from this country is, like, it's horrible. Be more enlightened than this. Like, you have hindsight now. Can we please, like, not go back to portraying countries like this as these horrible things? We already have someone who's trying to, like, imply that. Do you really need to kind of feed back into that old Islamophobia thing? So I thought it's doing, like, a huge disservice by I think there's a way to tell a patriotic tale and tell the story and do them justice without having to have that aspect of it. And I'm not saying, like, yeah, man, like, screw the Taliban, obviously. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean everyone in Afghanistan is in the Taliban. And I was like, this just feels like misinformation. And I think because it's not a good movie, like it's a good thing, because if it had been, I would have been afraid like people would, go back to it, would re-spark some of that like animosity. And we already have so much animosity towards so many different groups right now that like we really don't need that. So I really did not think it was a very good movie. And it's too bad because like they did do something impressive and heroic. And I feel like they deserved a better story to be told if someone was going to tell it. So I'm only going to give it 2 out of 5.
Wow.
Ooh.
Okay. So skip 12 strong this weekend.
It's 12 not strong. It's 12 very weak. Like the story is weak. Like they're strong, but that's about it.
The good news is you have another movie, and this is Daniel Day-Lewis's last film.
Which I call BS on, because I don't think, and I hope it's not, because so it's Phantom Thread, and it's getting hyped up, and it got way overhyped for me, and I was like, I hope this isn't his last performance, because I think, I personally didn't, I was like, this isn't great.
Yeah, dude, I watched the trailer, and what the hell is this movie about? I have no idea.
I was looking back at my notes, and it's just like, WTF, WTF, WTF. So Daniel Day-Lewis plays I can't remember what the French word is, but he plays basically like a dressmaker who has, it's in 1950s London. And so he has one of those whole fashion houses where it's like a dressmaker was like very revered and you make a whole line and, it's very posh and shishi. And so he plays a dressmaker and he runs the House of Woodcock, because their last name is Woodcock, and yes, I giggled, with his sister, and they have a very creepy, weird, like way too close siblings relationship. And so I thought this movie was maybe going to be like a murder movie. Like there were points where I was like, they murder people. They're like a brother. No, they don't murder anyone, which is too bad.
Wait, they're brother and sister? I thought this was a love story.
So then there's a love story involved.
Okay.
I'm going to put love in quotes because everyone's like, yes, there's such romantic tension. I was like, you have about as much chemistry as dead fish next to each other. I did not feel any chemistry between these two characters. So he is a dressmaker, like a very famous, well-known dressmaker. His sister helps him run the thing, and then clearly he has like he's a confirmed bachelor, which implies something else usually. That implies like you don't like women, but he actually just has like a rotating cast of young women who he brings in as muses. And so the whole story is he meets this woman Alma, who is his like muse of the moment, but she, usually he's like, love him and leave him. Once they're done, his sister basically like forces them out and disposes of them. She's like, no, you're done. We're done. He's done with you. Like, you've disturbed his morning routine. Like, you're out. So I was like, there's also a lot of mommy issues in it too. I was like, what is PTA working through? Paul Thomas Anderson directed it, and apparently on a nickname basis where everyone calls him PTA. But so it's about this woman Alma, played by Vicky Krieps, who basically stands up to him in one sense. She's like, she's obsessive and she won't let go, right? Like, he's basically like, no, I'm done with her. And she's like, no, I'm not done with you. And that could have been great, right? It could have been an interesting power struggle. And there were moments where I was like, yes, grow a spine. And then she doesn't. And I'm like, okay, she's building it up and she realizes she should, oh no, she doesn't think she should leave. And like, it's just, one of my notes was, I'm sick of movies written by men, because I was very much like, is that all that they think of women? That we're here to like trap a man? That's their only goal in life? That's what it constantly felt like. And that's the whole like third act of the movie. Sorry, a little bit of a spoiler. It's about like their sort of power dynamic, which the ending was very weird and very like it is a power struggle. So it got so overhyped for me. And academically, there are lots of things to admire with it, right? It's beautiful. There's a lot of details. There are a lot of bits that pay off later. But I'm like, as a gut feeling audience member, I was just sitting there like, what? Like, what is happening? I don't like this. I'm not super invested in either of the characters or all three of the characters, because the sister creepily third wheels all the time. It's beautiful, but I was like, I don't know if I needed the moving pictures of that, right? Like, I could see this dress and I'd be like, all right, that's fine. That's beautiful. I'll say the score is amazing because it's Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead, and it was really interesting and like very well mixed into like the drama of the scenes. But overall, I felt like it was a little long, and I didn't super dig it. It might have gotten overhyped for me, so I want people to like lower their expectations. And again, his performance, I was like, we've all seen Daniel Day-Lewis be mesmerizing, right? Like amazing. This, I was like, yeah, it's fine, but did it need to be Daniel Day-Lewis? I feel like another actor could have pulled this off. So I'm going to give it 3.6 out of 5.
That sounds like you're being generous.
I feel like I'm being generous because there are parts that I'm like, yeah, I admire this part of it, but as a whole, I think there are challenges. And so if you're willing to sit through it, great. But there's a reason that Daniel Day-Lewis is not winning the awards for this, right? Like, you think like, oh, culminating his career, it should be his last great performance. There's a reason that people, I think, have recognized this isn't his greatest performance.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe his last. We'll see.
Right, and that's why I'm like, for his own sake, as someone who's so impressive in that industry and in that field, like, it's such an artist, dude, you deserve a better like gold star as your swan song.
Sure. All right, there you go. Phantom Thread, you gave it a 3.6.
3.6
out of 5. Your choice if you want to see it or not.